We are getting bold on today's show and making our official proclamations. Let's get to it.
You are Locked On Colts, your daily Indianapolis Colts podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right. Thanks for tuning in and making us your first listen of the day. This is your daily podcast covering your Indianapolis Colts, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's show is brought to you by PrizePicks. It's the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Just go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code all lowercase LockedOnNFL to win $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive that $50 bonus. PrizePicks. Run your game. What is up, homies? It's Jake Arthur and Zach Hicks of HorseshoeHuddle.com. I am your resident credential media member for the site, and Zach is the toughest film nerd in the game. And today we got a lot to catch up on because we were slacking a little bit at the end of last week, but now there's a lot to catch up on. So just this week, Leonard Fournette was working out for the Colts today. The Colts brought in a couple new cornerbacks and Samuel Womack III and David Long Jr., a couple guys who have been around for a little bit, kind of been there, done that. There's a new Matt Gay injury of note, so that's always fun. Even more good stuff for Zach to talk about when it comes to kickers when they're injured. And then we're going to make some of our bold predictions for the season on both sides of the ball to wrap this thing up. So let's go ahead with our housekeeping here first. This one's kind of interesting, Zach. So Leonard Fournette working out for the Colts today. Now, he was one of like 9 or so other players who worked out today. David Long Jr. was part of that group, and he actually signed. So obviously nothing imminent for Fournette. If the Colts were to sign him, I think it would be practice squad first, probably. You and I were kind of kicking around the idea. This is probably for further down the road this season, kind of an in case of emergency thing. They will have already had this workout under their belt, and they can kind of call back if needed. But I think it's still interesting nonetheless, because I feel like there was, am I misremembering, but was there something with Fournette last year with the Colts? Like, were they maybe going to bring him in for a workout, or did they? Because this doesn't seem new.
Yeah, they were. I remember last offseason, they were looking at veteran running backs to bring in, and they flew in Kareem Hunt for a workout. And I believe Fournette was another guy they were considering as well at the same time. And I think they went with Kenyon Drake, or Kenyon Drake was already on the roster at that. I can't remember the exact timeline of it last summer. But yeah, no, I saw a lot of people reacting to Leonard Fournette working out with the Colts, like Jonathan Taylor fantasy people being like, oh no, I just drafted Jonathan Taylor. Like, this is going to take away. Look, Leonard Fournette, I believe last season, I saw the stat earlier, and I believe it was 14 carries for 40 yards total last year. Like, this is an older running back who, if he has any kind of role with the Colts, if he were to sign with the Colts, it would be as RB 3 or 4, just in case everyone gets hurt in front of him. I think it's mostly like you kind of see this with the roster and how fluid rosters are early in the season, whether it's the 53 or especially the practice squad. Like, the Colts are going to be cutting and bringing guys up on the practice squad like constantly over these next couple of weeks. So that's why it's kind of a moot point to even really discuss practice squad this early in the season, because so many guys are moving on and off it those first couple of weeks. But yeah, a guy like Leonard Fournette, it's kind of just to have him on speed dial, maybe the first month of the season goes by, and you have a situation like the Colts had with Deion Jackson last year, where he had a really rough debut game against the Jaguars as the lead back, and the Colts released him the next day. Like, that was it for Deion Jackson in Indy. And then they called up Trey Sermon from the practice squad, and he became a regular roster player. That could be the situation with like a Fournette, where it's like, if one of these guys just has a bad outing or they're not liking what they're seeing in practice, you can easily move off of a Sermon or a Goodson and bring a Fournette to the practice squad, or bring a hole up from the practice squad and put Fournette on, or, however you want to maneuver it here early in the season. So I don't think Leonard Fournette, for all of you guys who drafted Jonathan Taylor in fantasy for anything, I don't think a signing is super imminent with Leonard Fournette in the Colts. And even if one were to be imminent, I don't think it would change too much on the outlook. Like, this backfield is going to be dominated by Jonathan Taylor. Trey Sermon will get some touches. Tyler Goodson will get some passing down snaps and maybe the occasional run here and there. But at the end of the day, this is Jonathan Taylor's running back field. As long as he's healthy, he is the guy. And even if he goes down, it's Trey Sermon's backfield. So, like, I don't think there's too much to really look into with Fournette. It's a great name to talk about for sure. And some of the other names we got in here, Kella Witherspoon, I thought was a really cool name they brought in.
That's
Kelvin
been your
Joseph.
guy for a few years now on the open market.
Yeah, he's just a solid player, and I liked him too much as a prospect for sure. Kelvin Joseph, you brought up the other day, the super athletic kind of, head case corner.
Knucklehead.
Knucklehead. Then Stephen Gilmore, who is related to Stephon Gilmore. I think younger brother is what you said to me, right? Yeah.
Not the Gilmore everyone was looking for, but now Stephon is a Viking. So again, moot point.
Chris Ballard thought it was Stephon Gilmore. He brought him in. He was like, wait a second, this is not Stephon Gilmore. But bring in a bunch of veterans, get them on speed dial, look what they are looking like athletically. And then if injuries happen or, this experiment with the defensive backfield that they're doing right now doesn't work out, you have Witherspoon. You already had Witherspoon in here. You had Joseph in here. And then David Long Jr. obviously signed to the practice squad. They have guys kind of ready and available to step up if need be.
Yeah, so you mentioned David Long. So there's Samuel Womack III. He was a waiver pickup last week, and then David Long Jr. Something of a journeyman now. He had carved out a nice little name for himself early in his career. Was a Super Bowl winner with the Rams. He's bounced around quite a bit, most recently with the Giants. But this is both, I'm assuming, nickel special teams guys for the Colts. They're both south of 6 foot. I think Womack might be 5'9", 5'10". Same thing for David Long. Long tested really well before the draft, I believe. But yeah, that's what you're basically getting. You finally have your Kenny Moore insurance, and these guys contribute on special teams as well. Womack is a core 4 special teamer and is probably going to be your other gunner now on the opposite side of Ashton Dulin. So you got some utility in those guys. Like, hopefully you don't have to see him too much on the defensive side of the ball. Long is with the practice squad anyway, so you may not see him at all this season. But Womack is an active roster guy. So you wrote something on Womack recently, didn't you?
Yeah, I think he's a good shot to take for the Colts. I'm not going to compare it to the Kenny Moore, the second shot. Obviously, when Kenny was an undrafted free agent that got waived and the Colts claimed him, and obviously the biggest success story of Chris Ballard's career was finding a guy like Kenny Moore. But I think Womack is a guy you take a shot on. Former 5th-round pick, long arms, good athlete, has had some good moments, in the preseason, the offseason with the 49ers. I know his confidence got shot a little bit in 2022 when he started his first game in the slot and kind of got shell-shocked. I think it was the Eagles were his opponent too, which is funny if they were. I believe that's who it was. So Shane Steichen's Eagles, I believe.
Yeah, Shane will do that too.
Yeah, Shane will do that too. I think it was Devonta Smith too. So I have to double check on that. But yeah, he's a player got shell shocked a little bit, had some good moments on the outside. More so to me, I think his profile screams nickel, but I like him on the outside. I think he's got really good feet on the outside. So I like the potential of Womack. He's a guy that I would definitely take a shot on. And as your gunner and as a guy who can take some snaps on the outside, like, he's in the same tier as like a Dallas Flowers or Darrell Baker Jr. to me. So I like this shot by the Colts. I don't think it upgrades the room drastically by any means, but I like taking that kind of shot on a guy like that.
No, I definitely feel a little more comfortable now that you have that veteran presence behind Kenny Moore now. I mean, before, right. But, what was Tony Brown last year is now a guy who's played for D'Amico Ryans and Robert Saleh and has played in the Gus Bradley defense for years now. So my comfort level with the backup nickel is a little more now, especially since Micah Abraham is not back and is working out for other teams. That doesn't look great. So maybe we should just go ahead and fly that kite away that maybe he's not going to be back. But
right.
These aren't spectacular moves in the secondary, but these are the level of impact moves that if they were going to do something, I think we probably expected it to be about this much of a ripple.
Yeah, like a Kella Witherspoon might have been like like that kind of move too if he had signed or
which
something
still
like
may
that.
happen.
So,
I mean, knock on all the wood, but Juju Brents has not yet proved that he is a healthy player. I mean, Dallas Flowers was just banged up and had the Achilles last year, so they may still need a guy like Witherspoon, who is a Gus Bradley type of corner.
Right. So, we can't say none of these signings are imminent for sure. This roster and this team in general is going to be very fluid for the first month of the season or so.
And then, of course, we mentioned it at the top of the show, but again, Matt Gay today, Shane Steichen announced he's got a groin injury. Said we'll see when asked if he'll practice. I saw Gay the other day. Whatever day we were at the facility last, like Friday, I think it was. He had a noticeable limp, so that wasn't great to see. So again, like Shane said, we'll see if he practices this week. It's why they brought Spencer Schrader back to the practice squad. Obviously, this whole thing with Gay is just, let's just see. Like, let's get to the games and let's just see, because a kicker problem is the last thing you want, but maybe that's what they've got. Maybe we're overblowing it and it's going to be fine once the season gets here, but I digress. Next, we're going to get to some optimism. We're going to look at the offensive side of the ball, and we're going to give you our bold predictions for the season. All right, guys, the summer is winding down, but we are still enjoying live events out here. And there's no better place to get the hookup than at Gametime. Gametime's got a new feature called Gametime Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. It filters out all the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so that you don't have to waste a bunch of time searching through thousands and thousands of ticket options. One really cool thing they've got that they just did for an example of these kind of sporadic things that come up. For Labor Day, they had Dodgers at Diamondbacks today. It was a 50% off deal. And so they had tickets for weeks leading up to that. So, keep an eye on them throughout the sports calendar, because they will have really cool flash deals like that pop up all the time. If you're looking at stuff that is more local, obviously, in Indy, we have Post Malone coming up. I think that's next week. I'm going, so I should probably know a little more about that. Taylor Swift is coming up in November, I think. So the Colts will be sharing Lucas Oil Stadium with all the Swifties. When you're putting all these events together, remember that they've got the best features that you can kind of toggle through when you're preparing. They've got the seat view. Means you get a panoramic view of your seat before you buy the tickets, because obviously if you've got the crappiest seats in the world, you maybe want to rethink your options. They've also got the lowest price guarantee, which means they'll give you 110% of the difference if you find comparable tickets for a better price somewhere else. And then Gametime ticket coverage, which means your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry, because life happens all the time. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off of your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Zach, what time is it?
Game time, baby. It's game time.
That's right.
And this show is also sponsored by BetterHelp. What's something that you would love to learn? As an adult, do you make time to learn new things as often as you like? Or was that lost in childhood? Gardening, a new language, or maybe how to finally beat your best friend at bowling? Therapy can help you reconnect with your sense of wonder, because your back to school era can come at any age. Guys, I've told you many times, I have a million hobbies and they just bounce from day to day. That's what ADHD does to me. I have 1,000 hobbies and 1,000 things I collect. But one thing I've always wanted to do is just learn how to play an instrument. I don't care what instrument. I want to play some sort of instrument. That's really what I want to learn as an adult here. I need to find the time, obviously, to do that. And I need to find a way not to drive my wife crazy while I'm playing my instrument, or whatever instrument, my recorder or whatever I'm going to learn.
Recorder.
Right, recorder, whatever it is. But I really want to learn how to play an instrument, and also learn sign language. Like, there's a lot of things on my to-do list. And I think BetterHelp is going to be a way that can help me really narrow down my list, because that's what I need more than anything right now. But if you're thinking of starting therapy, Give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. Rediscover your curiosity with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOn today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOn. Alrighty, Locked On Colts everydayers. We are back talking offense. Now, we talked about at the top of the show our news and notes, obviously what we missed these last couple of days. But now, it's still kind of off season. We're still getting ready for that Texans game, and we have to get in our bold predictions for this season. Obviously, Jake and I whiffed big time last year with our bold predictions because look, we weren't going to have a prediction that says Anthony Richardson only plays 3 games.
I feel like that wasn't our fault. I would not like any of the responsibility for that.
Right. It was a tough one for us, but I think we're going to redeem ourselves here. And I'm going to kick us off with, these 2 bold predictions kind of go hand in hand, so I'm going to lump them in together. But you guys know I've been very pro Jonathan Taylor on this show this offseason because of just how he finished last year, how the Colts have invested in him, and take this from me as someone who told all my family members and all my friends and anyone who asked prior to Jonathan Taylor's massive 2021 campaign, I said, hey, if you guys have fantasy football, make sure you're drafting Jonathan Taylor because the Colts are talking differently about him this offseason. I think the vibes are kind of similar to how they're talking about him in terms of we're going to feed him. He's going to be a big part of our offense, especially as you can tell, early in the season when the Colts aren't leaning too hard on Richardson. They want to get that running game going, and Taylor's going to be a big part of that. So my 2 bold predictions are, 1, I think the Colts finished top 3 rushing team in the NFL this year. They were 10th last year. And that, again, was without the quarterback rushing element of Anthony Richardson. So I think top 3 is very, very feasible for this team. And then the Jonathan Taylor aspect of this, I think he has 1,500 total yards. He's top 3 in rushing yards this year among the NFL. He'll return to the top with the Christian McCaffreys of football and be that guy again in the NFL. I know we haven't seen it in 2 years, but just how he finished last season when he was actually healthy again, how he carried this team on his back in that final game and essentially a playoff outing. I am fully in on Jonathan Taylor. I've drafted him in both of my fantasy leagues. I am all in on Jonathan Taylor right now, guys, and I think he's going to have a massive season for the Colts.
Yeah, I am right there with you, and I'll actually do you one better. I'm going to say, because you're talking total yards, which of course means receiving as well. I'm going to say 1,800 total yards, which I mean, he had that just rushing in 2021.
Right.
Where I'm iffy is touchdowns. Right. Because we know he could score 20, but I think him and Anthony are going to rob so many touchdowns from each other. I still think he'll score 15. So I'm going to say he's going to have about 1,800 total yards and 15 total touchdowns because he'll probably get 1 or 2 receiving.
I could totally see it, man. He's going to have a big year. Just stay healthy this year, Jonathan, and it's going to be – this offense is set up for him with the quarterback rushing element, the offensive line being really good, Shane Steichen doing his thing, Shane Steichen leaning on the run game in the second half of games. It's all there for Jonathan Taylor this year, man. I'm expecting a huge season from him.
Yeah, without saying too much, just the things I know that the Colts are bullish on and want to do, it involves Jonathan Taylor quite a bit. They're going to be pretty reliant on him, which is going to lead me into my next one because a big part of that and what's going to help that productivity is I say Anthony Richardson is going to account for 35 total touchdowns. Now, I don't think that seems crazy because let's extrapolate his rushing touchdowns over a whole year. Let's say he has 12. For a guy who is going to be, we saw what that looked like last year. It seemed very doable. And then 23 passing touchdowns. And again, remember it's 17 game season. So I think that it maybe seems like a lot. And for a second year player who's essentially playing his first year, maybe that's a little rich, but I say he's going to account for 35. And man, I don't know. I think it's very doable. It's a pretty complete offense. You've got a top 3 running back with a top 3 offensive line, and you've got a pass catching group, including the tight ends, that is probably better than what people give it credit for. It's not.
It's solid. It's solid.
Yeah, it's not top 3 like your rushing attack is, but it can accomplish anything you want it to. You've got some vertical threats in A.D. Mitchell and Alec Pierce. You've got guys like Kylan Granson and Drew Ogletree that can get tough yards over the middle. Like they can stretch the seam. And then Michael Pittman Jr. can do a little bit of everything. Like your passing game, whatever the Colts want to do, they should be able to do it, basically.
Yeah, I'll say this real quick, so we got to get to our final segment on the defense. But I think the biggest part of the equation for him to get to the 35, because I kind of set the standard for what I think Richardson's going to do this year with Josh Allen's second year, which he had 29 total touchdowns, which a great second year by Josh Allen. Not a phenomenal one, but like a really good one from Josh Allen. But I think that it's really going to come down to that red zone attack that the Colts have, and just how dominant Richardson is in the red zone running game, like he was last year. In the couple games he started for the Colts last year, he was a really effective weapon in the red zone. I mean, the Rams game, he had 2 touchdowns, one passing and 1 rushing within 5 yards. He had that rushing touchdown in week 1 against the Jaguars. And then you even saw the 2 explosive runs against the Houston Texans as well. So it really comes down to what that rushing element looks like, because we've seen quarterbacks like Josh Allen and Jalen Hurts hit near 20 rushing touchdowns in a season in recent years. I mean, I think Allen was at 15 last year. I want to say Hurts was at like 18 last year. Hurts was at a ton of rushing touchdowns because of the push.
The standard for rushing touchdown numbers for quarterbacks has risen with guys like Allen and Hurts. Like,
right.
It used to be like 8 was a really good number, but you got to double it now.
Right. So you could see like a realistic path for Richardson being like 22 passing touchdowns and 13 rushing touchdowns, or like you said, like 23 and 12 or something like that. And I think that's very feasible without projecting him to be this like MVP candidate quarterback, like 35 total touchdowns from what Cam Newton during his MVP season is different than what if Richardson were to do it this year. So yeah, I think 35 is certainly on the higher end, but it's not completely unattainable for a full healthy season from Anthony Richardson by any means.
Absolutely. So we're bullish on the Colts rushing attack is what we're trying to say. So coming up, what about the defense? There's plenty to like. I mean, there's plenty we're scared of, but there's plenty to like as well. We are back with PrizePicks, baby. And let me tell you something cool that they're doing. 1 Caleb Williams passing yard gets you a win on PrizePicks every week in September. That's right. Just 1 yard gets you an automatic win every football weekend in September 4th or in September. And that's 4 weeks of free W's. So don't miss the deal on PrizePicks because it's gone when September ends. It's good news for me. I mean, that's daily fantasy, but I just drafted Caleb Williams in a super flex league last night. So I hope he gets at least 1 passing yard every week in September, even against the Colts. That's fine. And you guys can now win up to 100 times your money on PrizePicks with as little as 4 correct picks. PrizePicks is the best way to get action on sports in most states, including California, Texas, and Georgia. So again, guys like Caleb Williams, that's of obviously personal interest to me. But don't forget, like we've talked so much about PrizePicks in the past. They are our darlings during the football season. You get your projection. Anthony's going to run for 43.5 yards. You obviously want to slaughter the more than on that, but they have probably my favorite grouping of like things to mix and match that you could choose from. Your more thans and your less thans. I just always I think their stat projections are always fairly accurate and they make it a lot more interesting. Because honestly, you go into these things a lot of time way too confident and then you get burned. But I think PrizePicks does a good job of keeping us tethered to reality. So download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code LOCKEDONNFL on PrizePicks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. PrizePicks, run your game. All right, Zach, defense wins championship, so that may be a tough thing for the Colts this year. But again, we're talking optimistic. That's what we're doing today, Zach. Stop it. All right, so we'll go ahead. I'll start us out here because this is a guy I've been super bullish on all summer. He honestly is a star every summer during training camp, and it just does. Something always happens normally in terms of injuries. But we're assuming health this year, and we are praying for a full healthy season from Julian Blackmon. I say he's going to create 8 takeaways. Now, I don't mean it in the way that everyone created takeaways for Shaq Leonard when he was here, counting forced fumbles and fumble recovered both for him and interceptions. Like, this is either going to be an interception or he created 1 fumble turnover, essentially. But I'm going to give him 8 because last year he obviously had the 4 interceptions. But I can also recall like 2 or 3 other plays that got called back by a penalty or were just overturned by the replay crew. I thought he got kind of jobbed out of a couple more takeaways last year, and he missed the last 2.5 weeks with the shoulder injury. Yeah. So if we give him a full season, he looks like a freaking star, based on what he did this summer. If he could stay healthy, the guy has all the ingredients to be just a playmaking machine. So I'm going to give him a minimum of 8 created takeaways.
Biggest thing is staying healthy for him, because when he's out there, he's so good. And I think if he gets more free safety snaps this year, or the Colts rotate the safeties a little bit more like they seemingly are talking about in camp, and with this pass rush being really good this year, I do think 8 takeaways is very feasible for him. Like, we could see like a 6 interception type season, which is kind of what he's betting on when he took a 1-year deal with the Colts. So hopefully that comes, like, the 1-year deal bites the Colts in the butt a little bit, because he has a great season and hits free agency with like a bigger contract demand. But I'll take it for a great season out of Julian Blackmon for sure. This one that I'm going to start us off with on my end here is one that I've said quite a bit in recent podcasts. I think I've said this one like 3 or 4 times already this offseason, but I just want to make it official here. I have Kwity Paye leading the Colts in sacks this year. I don't have him leading the Colts in pressures or hurries. Like, I'm not buying like Kwity Paye is the best pass rusher on the Colts by any means. I think he's going to be a good player for them. But I do think when you have a guy who's so consistent at hitting his landmarks on one side and getting those powerful bull rushes, getting to his spot, and he has really good awareness to disengage when a quarterback is nearby. And then on the other side, you have Buckner and Latu, who are going to be just game wreckers. I mean, I know it was a preseason game against backups. We saw what they look like in those couple snaps against the Bengals. I don't think it's going to be that easy every time, but those guys are such game wreckers that quarterbacks, especially in a right-handed quarterback league, are going to feel the pressure to move away from their blind side, roll into their dominant side, and then Kwity Paye is going to be waiting right there. So I think you'll have a couple like clean sacks where he does beat guys, but I think he's going to get 10 plus this year purely from the threat of guys on the other side just running quarterbacks into him. And I'll take it. I'll take any kind of sack. I don't care what kind, if it's a coverage sack, if it's that kind of sack where he's getting where, the play is being run into him, like, that's fine. But I do think Kwity Paye leads this team in sacks primarily because he boosts his stats a little bit with Latu and Buckner just being such massive threats on the other side of the offensive line.
Yeah, huge beneficiary of getting a lot of probably weak side looks this time around with tight ends having to help against the other two. Because what I've seen from Buckner and Latu rushing together is, good God, that's going to be tough. And that's not even just being a homer. That's like literally what we've seen with our eyes so far. So that's going to be really tough. I like what you mentioned there. Like, he's already a good player, but just being so opportunistic with the one-on-one opportunities he's going to get, or just the quarterback flushing up into his area, I think that's got a pretty strong likelihood. Another one you gave us here that I think is good. Zaire Franklin is finally going to get a Pro Bowl nod with a healthy season and a little bit of interception luck, which he hasn't had. I think he only has like 1 in his career.
Yeah.
But the dude's been on a torrid pace for tackles. I mean, last year I think it was a knee injury and he got a little banged up. It slowed him a little bit. But 200 tackles has been within the realm of possibility from him each of the last couple years. And he probably would have got it last year if that knee injury didn't slow him down. He's got EJ Speed with him starting from week 1 this year. So there's going to be consistency next to him this whole time. I'm with you. Like, especially if he gets to like 200 tackles, he's going to have those extra stats you mentioned. Like, he's going to have an interception or 2, going to have a sack or 2. Like, he needs a signature play or 2 again. But yeah, I think eventually, if you're that productive for that long, like, it's gotta crack your way eventually.
Yeah, I think this is the year for Zaire Franklin. I mean, 2 years ago, he got his first year as a starter, had a really strong season for the Colts. Last year, off to a torrid pace, like you mentioned, and got that Pro Bowl alternate. Had some recognition in the offseason, too, where he was ranked, number 99 or number 100 on that NFL 100 list. I know it's not the greatest
The only
metric.
Colt on the list this
Yeah,
year.
I know it's not the greatest metric, obviously, for greatness, but it shows that people take recognition of him. Like he was like the 7th highest rated linebacker on there, which is really great for him. And I think this will be the year, like all it takes is like 2 deflected balls bounced up in the air that he comes down with to get those interception numbers. He's had a good camp in terms of pass coverage too, from everything you said. Like we've seen a little bit more pass breakups. We've seen him a little bit tighter on running backs and stuff. Showed a little bit in the preseason too. And then also just having Grover Stewart in front of him for an entire season.
That helps.
It helps in terms of getting tackled for a loss. Because I think last year, the big thing with him is he got on the precipice of 200 tackles, like he always does, but the tackles for a loss numbers plummeted a little bit last year compared to 2 years ago. I think when you have Grover back in there, it gives you the confidence to attack downhill a little bit more and be more comfortable, with your run fits and with your run blitzes, and you can get more run stops and tackles for a loss as well. So I think once he gets a little bit more of those other counting stats in terms of, again, tackle for a loss, interceptions, a couple more pass breakups, he's going to have the tackles. He has the name recognition now. I think this is finally the year for him to get that Pro Bowl nod. He's been right there a couple of times. And it kind of reminds me with Kenny, where Kenny for a couple years was just flirting with that Pro Bowl. And then he finally got it, I think in 2021, I believe is what it was. I think Franklin is right there, right on the cusp of getting that Pro Bowl nod. And I think he ends up getting it this season.
Yeah, I think if him and EJ Speed back up a little bit of their chatter with CJ Stroud from the offseason, if they have big moments in those, if they like do some signature things in those big moments against CJ Stroud, maybe like against the Jets on prime time, like if they, especially Zaire, if he does things in those moments, I think that'll definitely help.
Yeah, for sure, guys. That's all we have for today, but don't worry, we have the fun keep coming this week. We're going to talk more bold predictions, more expectations for the season. And obviously, we're going to be previewing this week's game against the Houston Texans, one of the biggest games of the entire season for the Indianapolis Colts. So make sure you guys are tuning into Locked On Colts all week. But before we get out of here, again, the new Locked On NFL is here. Locked On NFL is now 2 shows every single day. First, the madman Tyler Rowland, he always going to kill me for that. Tyler Rowland kicks off your morning with a double shot of NFL espresso and then stops by the barbershop with Tony Wiggins for some real NFL talk. That is going to be a blast of just a hectic show right there that I'll probably tune into as well right there, guys. Add in that Locked On local experts and you get the unprecedented NFL insight, hot opinions, detailed breakdowns, all in 30 minutes. It's a new Locked On NFL, and it's twice a day. Make the madman Tyler Rowland and the barber Tony Wiggins your second listen at the new Locked On NFL today on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. And if you guys want to become Locked On Colts insiders, this is Locked On Colts right here, and chat with us directly to get that inside scoop, follow that link in our show notes. And if you guys don't already, make sure you're following at Locked On Colts, at Jake Arthur NFL, and at Zach Hicks 2, all on Twitter /X or whatever the heck it's called now. We're also on TikTok and Instagram. Jake runs those accounts. So if you guys want to get some sweet millennial humor, it's right there with Jake. He's running it like a true millennial right there. Also, subscribe to us on YouTube, wherever you listen to your podcast. We love you guys' ratings, reviews, and we'll catch you guys back here tomorrow afternoon.